Greetings fellow YouTubers, I'm Mike, this is E.A.A, and this is a 1972 Pantera. So, I always like to do a few facts and figures about the car whenever I'm reviewing it and talking about it. So I'll start out with the kind of the more boring stuff. Some of you might not find it boring, but not going to get into it too deep. Honestly, I don't have a lot of facts and figures on this car. What I do usually end up getting is from Wikipedia, so you can just go to Wikipedia and check it all out. So the Pantera was manufactured from 1971 to 1993. Mid-engine car. The good thing is Italian design, but powered by American muscle. Yes, a 351 Cleveland from Ford is lying in wait underneath this hood. The car is made somewhere in the mid 300 horsepower range. Cars are relatively light, a little over 3,000 pounds, so their performance was very respectable back in the day when they first came out. They were capable of 0 to 60 in the mid 5-second range, and they had a top speed of about 160 miles an hour, which is kind of crazy in this car because it's very light in the front end. Anything over about 110, 120, you really feel it, and it doesn't feel like it's that well planted. So this car would actually do much better with some more downforce in front, but I'm not worried about that at this point in time. Just a really neat design. The first year or two, Pantera kind of struggled with their production, much like the DeLorean sitting next to it. But Pantera hung in there and lasted a lot longer than DeLorean did. Now Ford got involved with them, started helping with some of the manufacturing and things like that, and actually made the car a pretty respectable car. Wasn't a lot of them made. The numbers that I saw was about 9,000 total that are out there running around right now. I think every now and then you hear rumors that maybe they're going to come back and start reproducing the cars again, which would be cool. I don't know if that'll happen or not. As I said, a 351 Cleveland backed by a ZF 5-speed manual transmission. These things only came with a manual transmission. Now this transmission is the same transmission that is in the Ford GT, so pretty bulletproof. Pretty good to handle, you know, upwards around 400 or 500 horsepower. So let's take a look at that beautiful engine bay. There's just something about a mid-engine car that looks just so cool. Transmission sitting behind it. Like I said, 351 Cleveland. Now this one's been warmed up a little bit. It's definitely got a little bit of a cam, as you guys could probably hear when I started it up. It's got some performance mods. It moves very well. If you guys saw the video that I did with my friend Peter and his Pantera, of course he's got a 4.6 with a supercharger on top, and that car is an absolute animal. He guessed that car is probably around 500 plus horsepower. I'm sure it's probably that, if not a little bit more. I mean, that car was spinning in the first 2-3 gears. This car actually plants very nicely. It hooks up very nicely and just goes, which makes it a lot of fun. I would guess this one's probably somewhere around the, I don't know, low 400 range. I'm just kind of comparing it to my C5Z06 being about the same weight, and that's roughly around 400 horsepower. I really think that these cars are very similar in the power and the acceleration and the way they move. So I'm going to guess probably just a little north of 400 horsepower in this one. Now the car does have factory air conditioning, and yeah, that's the air conditioning unit right there. I did not know that until my friend Peter was telling me about that. I thought maybe it was to expel air out of the engine compartment, but no, that is actually the air conditioning. Normally these cars have a tray that sits right down inside of here, and you can actually carry luggage and things like that back here. Wouldn't carry like chocolates or anything perishable because obviously it's going to get very hot with the engine, but it does give you a pretty decent amount of trunk space. So up front, you have the basics: master cylinder for the braking, your battery, and you do have a little bit of room here to carry some stuff like that. Nothing major. You could probably get a small suitcase in there, but nothing too extensive. It's got the aluminum radiator that's been upgraded from stock, and it's got the dual electric fans. Car runs very cool so far, and granted it has been winter time, it hasn't been that warm, but I've never seen it get over 160 degrees. So interior wise, door panels are in pretty good shape. It does have some aftermarket seats. It's got the 4-point shoulder harness, seat belt setup, and a full array of gauges. You got your speedometer, tachometer, which I know is hard to see, and then you got your other gauges right there. Heat and climate controls, windows, lights, etc. And another really cool thing about these cars is the gated shifter. I think that is just a really cool setup.
And speaking of gated shifter, the shifter's a little different setup. If you're not used to it, it might throw you, but it's actually in first right now. Then you go up into second, third, fourth, and fifth, and the reverse is over here, all the way over. I thought it might kind of throw me off a little bit, but truthfully, I've only went to go into reverse one time when I just wasn't thinking about it. Other than that, it shifts nicely, it shifts smoothly, it goes into the gears the way it should. It's probably not something you're going to go through the gears really fast, but it shifts nicely.
Now, I bought the car with its stock wheels. They're just a painted wheel, much like this, except for a 15-inch or 15 by 7s in front, 15 by 8s in back. And it had like 245 tires in front, and I want to say 295s in the back. I went on ahead and upgraded and went with the 17-inch polished wheels. They're, I believe, 8s in front. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe they're 8s in front and 11s in back. So I've got some 335 meats in the back. So really getting this car to spin is, it's probably not going to happen. I mean, you can if you launch it hard enough, but just going through the gear, stepping into it, the car hooks really, really well. And it's kind of interesting because when I took a ride in Peters and, we were kind of skating around there in the first couple of years, he was telling me how really a stock one is a lot more fun because the power is so much more usable. You put it down to the ground and it just goes. And while it was really fun in his car, and his car is an absolute animal, I can't wait to take a ride in it when it's all fully dialed in and tuned in and broken in and where he wants it to be, I have to kind of agree with him. It's nice to be able to just step on the gas, have this thing get up and run and go through the gears, and no real worry about spinning or skating around or anything like that. While that can be fun and make for kind of an exciting ride, if you want to put the power down to the ground, this car does it extremely well. So the car is fairly tight inside. I mean, I'm 5'11", and I just fit in here. If I sit up straight, my head does touch the roof, but it's not bad. It's not a car I'd want to go really long distances in, but for running around here, maybe a local car show, that type of thing, not a problem at all. You kind of sit a little canted, much like a Viper, whereas all the pedals are over here, so your feet are kind of over off to your right a little bit. It's got a smaller steering wheel, which makes it a little easier to get in and out of, which I do appreciate. But it's a very tight cockpit, and when you're driving it, you're very much aware that you do have a fire-breathing motor right behind you, and there's nothing in front of you. So it's an interesting experience, much different than the DeLorean. The DeLorean obviously has its motor in the back, but it's kind of farther back there. It's a little quieter, a little more subdued. There's a little bit more front end in the DeLorean than this. This just kind of cuts off, so it's definitely a very interesting driving experience. It doesn't ride bad. It's actually fairly comfortable. There's not a lot of rattles to the car. I actually bought this car from a dealership down in LA. They deal pretty much exclusively with Panteras. Guy's name is Jerry. The company's name is P.A.A. Motorsports. So if you're in a market for a Pantera, I would highly recommend him, and because go talk to him. Sent me a lot of photos, lots of videos and things like that to help me make up my mind. He had several that I was looking at, and this one, within the budget and just the condition, I felt like this was the best one, and he agreed. Delivered the vehicle for me, which I appreciate, so I didn't even go down and see it in person. It just showed up, and I'm not disappointed at all. I had a few little hiccups and things like that. Supposedly the motor was built about 15,000 miles ago, but it hasn't been driven for a long time. So Jerry told me that it would need to be driven. So when I got it off the trailer and I took it around the block, and of course I've got to step into it to see what it will do. I got into it, and the first thing I noticed when I look in my rearview mirror is I am rolling coal. It is just smoking something fierce. Then, about the time I hit, I think second gear, suddenly my passenger compartment was flooded with antifreeze and water. I thought that I had actually blown the heater core. It turns out it was just a heater hose, but it needed a little bit of carburation work. It was running just a little rough. It had a Holly on it. As you guys may know if you follow my channel, I don't have really great luck with Hollies. So we switched over to an Edelbrock 750, and it pulls pretty nicely. I noticed really the right time to get the most out of this car is right around 5,500 RPM. If you take it past that, then you miss a sweet spot and it kind of falls a little bit. But the car pulls very nicely. As you guys can see from the test drive, it pulls very nicely. It runs very good. I have no complaints about it. It's as fast as I need it to be. So what made me want a Pantera? If you guys follow my channel, you know I've bought, sold, traded a lot of cars over the past year and a half. And what made me want to get this car? Well, talked about this a little bit before, but I happened to find a Corvair V8 conversion, mid-engine conversion, and I was kind of interested in that car. So I went to look at it, went for a ride in it, and quite honestly, I was pretty disappointed in it. And then as I started looking at it and thinking about, okay, you know, servicing it and getting into work on it, thinking about Eddie, because, you know, I like having Eddie around, I like to keep him happy, and I don't want to break his back or anything like that. Basically, he would have had to work on that Corvair's engine through the back window that was right about here and lean in and do all that stuff. And it's like, man, I wouldn't want to do that, so I'm sure he wouldn't want to either. So it got me to thinking about, okay, what other mid-engine cars are out there? What's cool? What could I get? And, you know, of course, there's always Ferraris, there's Lamborghinis, there's McLarens, things like that. There was obviously the Ford GT, but all those vehicles are really out of my reach. Those are stretched. I mean, this car was stretching it in itself. I just could not see spending that kind of money. Then plus the upkeep and maintenance and everything like that. So I got hooked on the Pantera, and it just so happened that I was at a cruise. I did a video on it some time back, but I was at a cruise and we were all parked, had our cars there, and in pulls Peter with his Pantera. And I just, man, I was like glued to that car. I filmed it coming in, parked, I filmed it going out, and I just fell in love with it. So I got to know Peter there, and he invited me over, and he took me for a ride in his car, and I was just hooked. I mean, it was just so cool. These cars are just so cool. When Eddie was out working on it, and he'd take it out and drive it around, he'd come over to the house, and he'd take off. I mean, I'd have to go out there and watch him take off in this car, because, you know, he would step into it, and it's just, it sounds so good. It looks so good. It accelerates out really nicely. It's just an attention-getting car. It's not a car that you see a lot of. So, you know, I had to sell a few vehicles. I had to move some things around and make it work. And, you know, I dipped into my retirement a little bit more than I would have liked to. But I'm really happy with the car. The car's going to be around for quite a little while. I don't plan on it going anywhere. I'm really getting to the point where my collection here is basically where I want it to be. I'm very, very pleased with the collection. I just, be honest with you, since I got this car, it's been over a month now, I have no desire to even look. And not that I don't look, I mean, I look around a little bit, but, you know, there's just nothing out there I want. There's nothing that I can think of, oh, I want to get rid of this car to get that, because I really, really like my collection. And I am going to be doing a 3-part series on my collection. I'm going to talk about which cars are bucket list cars. I'm going to talk about which cars are keepers, which could potentially go if the right deal came along or what have you. But and really just the plans for vehicles and things like that, and, you know, what the future holds for everything. So be looking for that to be coming. But yeah, I'm totally stoked about this car. So I know I didn't do any like talking and driving on this video. It's just the shots of me driving the car around, a few acceleration pulls and things like that. And it's not that I couldn't have had a conversation and talked to you guys over the engine noise or what have you when I'm driving the car, but it seemed like a little bit too much effort to put in. It seemed easier to do it this way. So all I can tell you is it's a lot of fun to drive. It accelerates very nicely. It sounds great, gets lots of looks, lots of attention, and it's just a lot of fun to drive. If you can drive one, definitely take an opportunity to go for a ride in one, drive one. If you own one, you already know what I'm talking about. They're really very cool, iconic cars, and I'm happy, very happy. So I am going to end this video. If you like it, please give me a thumbs up. If you haven't already, definitely subscribe to this channel. P.O. Box and Instagram, as always, will be in the description below. God bless, take care, have an absolutely amazing day.